Good afternoon. My name is Tessa Bremner MacDonald. We have come here together with a deep sense of loss and sadness to express our grief at the death of a very special person who was loved by many. We are also here to celebrate the life of someone who wrote his name in our hearts through his immense generosity of spirit. We welcome all of Henk's family, especially Teenie, Henk's other siblings, and his many friends, and it's been such a pleasure to meet you all, and I wish it were not at such a sad time. He loved his family so much. There are those who can't be here today but wish they could be, including his friends on Kangaroo Island, and also his niece, Tracy Murray, Charlie's daughter, who sends her apology and love. I'm going to say something about Henk, and you probably all know this anyway, but I'm still going to say it. So, Hendriekus Maria Levering was born in Holland on the 11th of January 1947, not long after the turmoil of the Second World War. When he was 8 years old, his family emigrated to Australia. After nearly a year living in various migrant camps, his family settled in Adelaide, where he learned to speak English and was educated at St. Joseph's Primary and Rostrevor College, where he joined the Army Reserve. After finishing school, he did a plumbing apprenticeship and subsequently became a master plumber. Henk was a shy child who wouldn't talk to anyone outside his family circle. Once when he was lost, he ended up at a police station where he refused to give his name or where he lived. He sat sucking his thumb until his father found him. After that, he never stopped talking and was known to his friends as a cheerful chatterbox. Henk loved to travel. He lived for a while in New Zealand and Vanuatu, as well as Australia. He travelled to Turkey and all over Australia and Europe, then Canada and America. His love of the sea and sailing led him to visit many more places and to take a cruise around the world, during which he visited Holland, where he met up with one of his sisters, and together they journeyed to England, Scotland and Wales. Travel was in his blood and made his feet itch. Finally, he visited Kangaroo Island, where he decided he belonged. He said, "I've realized that I've spent half my life looking for a home like Kangaroo Island." It was there he wanted to spend the rest of his life. Henk had been sailing since he was 28, and as soon as he arrived on the island, he immersed himself in activities pertaining to the sea. He was one of the team that is building the replica of the old sailing ship, the Independence, at the rig shed at American River. He joined the Kangaroo Island Yacht Club and the Strawbridge Pointers, which he described as a great bunch that goes sailing every fortnight. With a group of pointers, he sailed to Point Morrison, which Henk unashamedly considered to be Cape Levering. He assisted the Commodore aboard Rubicon, fulfilling such duties as joke-telling, photography, and checking the plimsoll line on a bottle of Highland Park whiskey. His friend and fellow sailor, Greg Roberts, described him as a ray of sunshine on the wharf at the river, and certainly a wonderful, if unsuspecting, entertainer on the water. There are many anecdotes about Henk and sailing. He always enjoyed himself, and those who sailed with him always returned home with a good story, often about him. There was one time when he sailed Angel's Wings onto the sand at Rocky Point, leaving the stern of the boat in 2 feet of water. He wanted a beer, so he walked aft to get a bottle, lost his footing, fell overboard into the shallow sea to a round of applause from his friends. He quickly changed his clothes and joined the party on land. Not 20 minutes later, finding his bottle empty, he managed to repeat the whole pantomime. Greg recalled his famous smile going behind a cloud just for a moment as he stood shivering in his wet clothes. Henk photographed many sailing trips, but one time when he anxiously rushed to secure a line at American River, he slipped and fell into the water. Again. There were no photographs this time because, unfortunately, the camera was around his neck. Not long after Henk arrived on the island, he married Jan, and together they built a house at Brownlow. He was heartbroken when Jan died after 15 months of marriage. After her death, he left the island to begin a journey around Australia in his yacht with Ruby, his dog, the two loves of his life. It was on one sailing trip that his boat, Angel's Wings, turned upside down and threw Henk into the water, where he remained for a day and 2 nights. He managed to stay calm and was eventually rescued. At first, his rescuers thought he might have drowned because there was no sight of him. They circled around his boat, and quite suddenly his head popped up. A line was thrown to him, but he refused to take it until his boat was righted. "Catch the line," his rescuers shouted. "No, I must save the boat." "Bugger the boat, you're more important." "No," he replied stubbornly, refusing to swim away from the floundering boat. Miraculously, they managed to turn it over. Only then would Henk allow himself to be saved. Last night, I received a text via Teenie from his best friend in Queensland, who wanted me to say a few words about their friendship. From an early age, Henk loved the sea. His lifelong friend, Adrian Seifert, who can't be here today, recalls adventures with him, particularly when Henk bought his first car, an old Chev. He cut the roof off it and installed a rack that could hold about 10 surfboards. Then he pulled the seats out and put a big double mattress in so he and his friends could go surfing for weekends and stay overnight. The roof rack was made of pipes, and Henk, being a plumber, connected a tap and a keg. It was on one occasion when Henk, having made great use of the keg, saw a boy floundering in the water. With a dreadful hangover, he plunged into the sea and saved the boy's life. Adrian introduced Henk to sailing, Henk's passion throughout his life. Adrian added, "Henk has been a lifelong friend. I will always remember the great times we had, and he will never be forgotten by me." Henk enjoyed volunteering, and for 7 years he was an ambulance officer and also a member of the Coast Guard. Henk loved dogs, and when Ruby died, he was really upset. This is a personal story about how we met Henk. It was through Ruby that we met Henk. My husband and I were walking at Brownlow when we saw a dog wandering on its own. At the same time, we heard a worried voice calling, "Ruby, Ruby." We looked at the dog's tag and followed the voice. There was Henk, beaming with joy to see his beloved dog. He invited us for a glass of wine the next evening. We shared a bottle and he taught us to play rummy cub. This became a regular event, either at his place or ours. From that moment, we discovered that we had met a gem of a human being, and our friendship blossomed. If there was one thing everyone agrees with, apart from how nice he was, it was his constant, infuriating, annoying whistling. When Henk installed plumbing or played rummy cub, he whistled. He whistled non-stop. "Sorry," he'd say. Silence for 1 minute, then he'd start again. After Ruby's death, his sister Teenie found him a puppy, Rummy, which Henk said would grow into a very small dog. Rummy grew and grew until she was a huge and much-loved dog. He said at the time, "No dog will sleep in my bedroom." After a few weeks, Rummy moved in and slept in her bed beside him. She woke him every morning at 7 to rub noses. He adored her, and she was his constant companion until the day he was finally taken to hospital, never to return. Rummy knew that Henk was going to die because when we drove around to his house with her, she refused to get out of our van and looked sad. Rummy now lives on a farm where she plays with the ducks and goes on long walks. Henk was keen for the house we are building to be successful, and he gave and lent us plumbing tools and plenty of advice. In exchange, I often went to his house to give him reflexology. He thought of us as adventurous, building a house with our own hands at our age, and he liked people who took risks. In all the time we knew him, we never heard him say a bad word about anyone. His friend and sailing companion, Tony Blight, said, "No one could have had a more generous-hearted and loyal friend." His neighbours say he was always there for them, always willing to lend a hand when needed, and enjoyed a good conversation over a glass of wine. But one neighbour said he was a stubborn mule. Just before he died, she found him mowing his lawns against all our advice. She dragged him off the mower, and when we told him off, he just smiled. Henk spent a lot of time going in and out of hospital, and he was always grateful to the doctors who treated him. Jeremy Wells, Alex Stoltz, and Kyle Fairclough. We're now going to show a video of Henk's life, and I would really like it, while you are watching, just to remember some of the joyful moments that you have spent with Henk. I thought it might be, maybe I'm wanting to indulge myself, to read a poem which I think is really appropriate for Henk. It's Sea Fever by John Masefield. Some of you might know it. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. And the wheels kick and the wind's song and the white sails shaking and a grey mist on the sea's face and a grey dawn breaking. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call and may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying and the flung spray and the blown spume and the seagulls crying. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover and a quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. Henk was a loving brother and uncle, as well as a true friend to many people, and will be sadly missed. In fact, Henk will leave behind him a huge empty space that will be hard to fill. The immediate family are now going to lay roses on Henk's coffin. Tenderly and reverently, we commit the body of Henk to the care of angels. We grieve at this parting. We take joy in that he brought love and meaning into our lives. We will remember him always. And the family will now leave, and we ask everyone else here present to go with them, and you are invited for a drink at the Mark O'Shea pub, and we all loved Henk so much.
Thank you, Tasha.
Thank you so much.